Hi guys. Thanks, Carl,
Hello.
Hi, Emilio. Hi, Matt. Carl, we just
Hey,
spoke.
Oliver.
Yeah, great to have you on. I think we are waiting for at least one more speaker. Actually, one of my panelists here, Stipe Maric, called in and he couldn't make it because he catch COVID. Actually, his condition was deteriorating rapidly over the day, so he's sorry he cannot join. But I think this gives us a little bit more space to elaborate.
Oliver, sorry for my technical team. So I say, who is not coming?
Yeah, Stipe Maric is not joining, I think, if nothing changed, because he informed me that he caught COVID and his condition is deteriorating. Yeah, so yeah. So guys, yeah, who else should be on the panel here? I have so we have Matt, we have Emilio. We actually Stan Stanaker should join, but we could maybe just start already here. So very excited to have here some real experts here on the panel on the subject. So Emilio Cesaris is the Chief Legal Officer at SuperRare, a well-known platform in the space, in the NFT space. Welcome, Emilio. And we have also Matt Coleman here, and we just connected here via LinkedIn today. I think you have a special application in the area at the intersection of NFTs, blockchain, and probably the sports industry, which is very interesting because I myself am a co-founder and also chairman of Liquidity, which is a platform tokenizing fandom in a broad sense, which is also using NFTs there. So maybe I might switch my head in in the discussion. Then we had a brief discussion just before the conversation here with Carl. He might want to stay for a few minutes because he has also some contributions to this discussion to make. But before we do so, I would like to probably frame the topic a little bit with my understanding of what non-fungible tokens are and what this means basically for the economic growth and the perspectives here. So my understanding of NFTs is more or less that we have the innovation of the unique digital bearer token here that came to life through the Bitcoin blockchain, and what we have as use cases and in the NFTs or in general here in that space is the peer-to-peer transfer of assets on the internet, and they can be digital or the digital representatives of physical assets. We have second, the replacement of expensive manual trust provisioning processes by software. So trust is moved to the blockchain, to software. And we have tokens as, I would call it, incentive machines to make people do things. For instance, to engage in a community. Tokens can also be, as we know it, banknotes. Yeah, they make us work for a living, things like that. And in the digital realm, they are slightly different. So now, when it comes to so-called non-fungible tokens, they are not interchangeable against each other. So they are unique and represent, for instance, a piece of art or another unique object, like a patent could be, like real estate, I would say, would be such an object that can be represented by a non-fungible token. They are, for me, ownership-bearer tokens. Now, what does that mean? These tokens dematerialize ownership, just as we saw the dematerialization of our calendars, for instance, through these phones here, the dematerialization of mail through the phones, etc., etc. Now we have the dematerialization of ownerships, and NFTs are sort of the perfect tool to do that. In essence, the NFTs or such an NFT contract represents just a two-column list with a token ID and an ownership right. And when you buy such a token, what do you have? You have actually the right, the exclusive right to change the ownership in such a spreadsheet. This whole market developed, as we all know, here in the panel, very, very dynamically this year, or the last year actually, end of 2019, beginning of 2020. We want to be a little bit dive deeper into the application areas and into what that means from an economic perspective as well. What we see or what we saw, for instance, here in the art world in, I think it was March 2020 or so, when this Beeple work was sold spectacular for 69 million US dollar. When you look deeper into that, you see that this was actually an investment fund, and I would consider it probably as a marketing measure to do so. We've also seen all those topics here around the CryptoPunks. We've seen Bored Ape Yacht Club, etc., the personal profile pictures, and I'm pretty sure that we will see further applications in that field. Happy to discuss with you. But before we dive into this, I want to hand over maybe to Carl, because we just had an interesting discussion here in the pause around some aspects which relate to this. And you are operating a fund in the Cayman Islands, Carl, that actually is in the lending business, more or less. So I can get money if I give you my NFT, and you would give me US dollars for it. That's the one thing. And related to that, you have a second fund, I heard, that is in the litigation business. How does that actually connect? Can you shed a bit light into that, inspire our discussion? Because we also have the chief legal officer here of SuperRare. That's probably an interesting spin here.
Thank you very much, Oliver, and thanks for the time and everyone speaking. So what we are doing in Cayman Island is we have several funds. We make virtual hedge funds for different clients. One of our clients has art fund, and also the art fund collateralizes art for museums and so on to borrow money. But now with NFTs, this of course changed totally. So it is possible also to basically take the NFT as collateral and give loans out. The more interesting fund is coming from what was our experience with $20 million costing litigation against AT&T with patents, and we have quite experience in patent litigation in the United States. And we noticed that a lot of people think it is just okay to create tokens of artworks from existing people, which existing artists just by photographing a picture and thinking, I bought the picture, so I split it in two and I sell this picture also as NFT, not noticing that the same thing applies like by buying music. You buy the album, you have the right to have the album, you don't have the right to make copies from the album and sell the copies from the album. You have only the right for the pictures. And this was inspiring a lot of legal counsels which do litigation for patent infringement, also to go in litigation of this NFTs, which are basically infringed on, and defending artists to get the rights for the NFTs. So this is basically a very interesting topic, because seeing the NFT, and it's a great thing, the non-functional tokens, and there is a lot of other applications, but there is also necessary to comply with current laws, and this should be always thought about it. But I don't want to interfere there more. Please, you have an interesting discussion, and we have legal counsels here, we have everything. Just let the discussion free flow, and please, back to you.
Thanks a lot, Carl, for this reminder, basically, that in this digital realm, we also have legal aspects to consider. And with that, maybe I just give the word to Emilio Casares. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about yourself, what you are doing and your company is doing in the NFT space, and take your time to give us a broad perspective here, how you see this developing.
Yeah. I appreciate the time, Oliver, and thank you to the other panelists as well. My name is Emilio Casares. I'm the Chief Legal Officer of Super Rare Labs. That is the company behind the Super Rare Network. For those of you who don't know, we are a single edition, one of one digital art, crypto NFT platform. A lot of kind of words to describe this industry now, but we kind of pioneered the original crypto art movement, which brought a lot of institutional appeal in the art world to the crypto art movement. A lot of the artists that you see, like Pac and Xcopy and Hackatal, these big blue chip artists, so to speak, originated on our platform, as our team was kind of the first one to really connect the dots on fine art on the blockchain. Our platform grew out of the Ethereum blockchain, and we were the first platform to implement the royalty standard for our NFTs, which is actually a pretty compelling use case for smart contracts, right? And to create a marketplace that automatically enforces rules that effectuate policy goals, right? To reward artists for their contributions and creativity, but not without its legal challenges, which we could discuss today, as it's hard to harmonize the royalty approach across platforms. But a bit more about the platform. We are a curated digital art platform. So the whitelisting of permissions, and when I say whitelist, I mean when somebody is authenticated to do art on the platform to mint NFTs, we traditionally had the keys to that kingdom. We were the gatekeepers, we curated the platform, and we really wanted to create the world's best network of curated artists. But for those of you who follow the platform, you'll know that we've recently decided to go the route of the DAO, with a specific intention of trying to decentralize the curation of the platform, which is going to have really interesting kind of an economic approach to curation, which a lot of people in the world are interested to see. There's so many NFTs out there, and we're interested in developing the curation layer. Yeah, absolutely.
Can I just chime in here at the decentralization of the curation aspect? What does that mean? So if I buy your token, I have a say in what artist, what next work maybe of Park or another famous artist would be onboarded, or things like that. Is that and I'm rewarded for that in terms of that I get preferred access, or what would that mean?
Yeah, It's a great question. So, and I will kind of like pause with the disclaimer on saying that, like, of course, there's nothing here that should be interpreted as financial advice with respect to Rare. And the developing of use cases of Rare are still subject to the organic decision making of the community. But at launch, what is supported through Rare token ownership is the ability to participate in what we are calling the space race. So a space within Super Rare is its kind of own autonomous business vehicle where curators and gallerists, they can open up a space and they can start to whitelist their own artists. So the idea is less so currently that individual peers in the network can invite other peers in the network. It's more like we're creating kind of privileged access for certain people, and the community is responsible for putting those people in power. We've had one space race so far where we have inducted into the network 5 additional spaces. So at first it was just us who are whitelisting. Now we've said, hey, the community has the ultimate taste-making authority in this space. A lot of kind of the speculators don't really know how to value a crypto art, and what we're seeing is that like the curators are now the crypto native people. So we've empowered our community to put forth the people that will now be making curation decisions on behalf of the network. But if you kind of are familiar with the way these networks work and think about a reputation of networks in this sense, you can start to see that there's a lot of staking mechanics, there's a lot of coordination tools that we can put on top of these spaces to really start to create a value out of the community, to understand a curation in an economic sense, and of course, to bring more crypto art to the masses. So we're really excited about the decision to decentralize. We think it's going to be absolutely phenomenal for the NFT space to have a curation layer, so that people are incentivized to play the game and to get rewarded. But aside from the decentralized aspects of the network, there are a lot of other legal issues that we can dive into today. That is behind like the authenticity of NFTs, what intellectual property rights accompany an NFT, what is the intent of the artist when they minted NFT as to not mint subsequent NFTs that could defeat the expectations of a first collector. There's really, it's an open book right now, and the book is being written in real time. So I'm happy to have a insightful conversation with you all on this panel.
Great intro and overview, Emilio. With that, I welcome here Matt Coleman, and please give us an intro of yourself and what your company does in the space and how this relates to the NFTs.
Sure. Look, welcome. Glad to be here. I don't know if it's good morning, good evening. I'll put it out there for that. I'm currently based in Miami and Los Angeles. I am from Australia, but primarily my career has been in the entertainment world. Actually, Emilio, my favorite artist is Android Jones on your platform. I've seen a lot of his virtual reality work, and that's what we do. We create augmented and virtual reality content in the entertainment space. And that's where I came across Android about probably 6 or 7 years ago. So check that out. Our company is called, it's great. Our company is called fansxr.com. XR means extended reality. And what we've done in the sports and entertainment and music area is created an NFT innovation lab where what we shoot live into the real world, we're shooting live sports, music concerts, and we put that into the metaverse. We have a different spin on this. In the coming 8 weeks, we'll be releasing what we call a time slicer for global broadcasters worldwide to enable real-time broadcast NFTs for those greatest historic moments in entertainment. Now, you could also buy a time slot during a match, a football game, baseball game, and we're white labeling the whole service for our clients as well, which is important. can talk a little bit about the infrastructure, but you know, Solana is involved. You know, happy to take any queries off our website. As I said, that's fansxr.com. But look, the sports industry has been taken by storm last year. If you don't know,
NBA Top Shot.
Yeah, the Top Shot, it's probably gross, probably up to $1 billion now, you know, within 6 or 7 months. 50% of those transactions, last I heard, were on crypto wallets, the other 50% on credit and debit cards. That's actually quite an important development for the industry. They've had about 1 million users only, when you think about it. So I know from the previous panel, you're talking about the number of wallets and the number of multiple wallets that people have. But this, you know, the NBA has starting to, and Dapper Labs are starting to open up the world, you know, not just to the crypto enthusiasts here. You know, what we're anticipating, we have some major launches in the music festival space in May this year with the largest music festival in England called Glastonbury. It's their 50th year anniversary, and there's a metaverse that's been created, and we're filming off 11 stages at Glastonbury into the metaverse, and you'll be able to go in and buy the NFT art inside the metaverse. And that's a virtual reality environment with a headset, but it's also a digital device, mobile device activation as well for mass market adoption.
Yeah. How do you see actually the adoption topic here? Because let's say that the traditional fan, especially in the sports world, at least here in Europe, in Germany, is actually quite conservative. Is that different in the States? So that people, or in England, that people are more open, and also the clubs, for instance, or yeah, the organizers are more open to integrate such a technology into their offering, their services.
Yeah, from what I've seen in the sports sector, it's really young enthusiasts. I mean, look, you can buy an NFT for $3 on the Top Shot. So it's garnering, you know, the Generation Z audience as well, who have been charging their parents' credit cards on Apple iPhones and the Apple stores and Google stores for the last 15 years, right? It's potentially a similar market. I'm sure Emilio and Carl have seen in their sectors of the market, you know, a cross section of borders, Europe versus Asia versus America, and South America even as well. I think on the sports side, the best thing we've got going is that if you're a super fan or a casual fan, you can actually pick up a collectible and then trade that and keep that as an asset. And I think, you know, this is just the beginning. I mean, you know, the market last year peaked at $24.9 billion in revenue. The year before, it was only just under 100 million. I mean, this has absolutely exploded. So there's a lot of other areas of the market that are driving huge growth, including Sandbox, Decentraland. We haven't even touched, you mentioned real estate. You know, that's those two companies sold $100 million worth of land at the end of November in 1 week.
But exactly, but that's virtual. That's virtual land, and there might be also a connection to actual physical utility, to real life utility in this NFT sector. If I think, I mean, what we are doing, I'm not now changing a bit the head here to liquidity in tokenizing fandom. We created so-called utility NFTs, which live on our platform first and foremost, which are, for instance, this platform enables us, or enables our clients here to build their own fan platform and make themselves a little bit independent from the major platforms like Facebook or Instagram, highly customizable, and issue NFTs there that have a functionality and utility in this ecosystem. Imagine you're a fan of an NBA team or a soccer club or something. This is meaningful in this community. And you can also attach a utility, a real life utility to it, for instance, an invite to a championship finals or a special event with your favorite star or whatsoever. So things that are highly valued by these fans and that they also want to pay for it beyond what we see, let's say, on CryptoPunks or something like that, where you have all those aspects that are a bit, let's say, I would manipulative in terms of pricing, because people are trading and pushing the price up, basically. So developments we actually don't want to see too much, because obviously this can damage the market enormously. So how do you see this? Would you agree that we will have let's say a development and an evolution that in the NFT space that goes, let's say, beyond the actual digital object, so that we see a connection and a bridge to real life utility associated to it? Whoever wants to speak.
I'll just add, look, there's an augmented reality and virtual reality functionality for us in the metaverse, where instead of just selling, NFT collectibles, you'll be able to pop up and buy a real life item, and that's authenticated by Louis Vuitton, as an example. If we're going down, that example, there's the monetization is pretty much endless in the metaverse, I think. And you can attach, as you've seen in the music business, the Foo Fighters launched their last album with an NFT component, and you could get, bonus backstage pass opportunities to meet them, or upgraded seats, or autographed copies. There was all sorts of incentives and opportunities, and there's obviously rewards with tokens. The gaming model is, play to earn. Play to earn in the blockchain space on the gaming side of it is growing. There's a good number of developers in the gaming sector that have raised good venture capital that are making money, $1 million in the first few months of just trialing it out. So there's some good money, and there's a good business model behind it.
And to jump in here, I definitely think that the utility, the value proposition to NFTs is nowhere near complete. We are definitely still in the early days of NFTs, where these assets kind of, in my mind, represent archaic primitives of what assets in the future might look like, right? And you've kind of hit the nail on the head in terms of understanding how what are subsequent ways you can monetize and financialize these assets. And there's going to be a lot of ways to do exactly that. In the licensing context, a particular interesting use case, I guess, which is pioneered from the Bored Ape Yacht community, they kind of attach a supposed commercial rights, a license to their NFTs, right? So that's an interesting value proposition that clearly has social and community support, as people want to treat their avatars and treat their assets as extensions of their identity, rather than personal property that is just for display purposes. But there are problems with that approach, though, as well. So in the Bored Ape context, it's you have this license that is just floating around on the internet, and it's presumably attached to these terms, but the actual execution of the license, or the actual enforcement of the license as well, is completely handled off chain. So if anybody wanted to create, a screenplay or a television series around their Bored Ape yacht club, they would face the immediate hurdle of having to kind of understand and interpret the scope of the license as it pertains to their business operations, and that requires attorneys to figure out. And then let's say it exceeds the scope of the license, is any money going to be owed to Yuga Labs, right? Like there's a lot of interpretational enforcement difficulties. So where we're probably going to see the space going is understanding ways in which a license can be actually executed and monetized on chain, right? So like, for example, at Super Labs, the types of things that we're working on is like understanding how to kind of create and enforce a derivative works license on chain, so that the derivative works cannot be minted unless the person who's trying to mint that owns a specific asset, right? And then that specific asset could tell the marketplace instructions on like, hey, when this work gets sold, this person gets paid. This community of token holders gets paid, right? So understanding the extension of the IP license as something that is capable of being interpreted and enforced on chain. Another kind of like real world example of this is like the NFT display. Currently, you have people that are trying to, create a display on the NFTs you own, which is an exciting value proposition. But again, it's this kind of off-chain coordination thing. It's like, hey, I'm confirming that you own this NFT. That's really easy to do. So I'm going to give you a print of it, right? But a more complex and potentially social and community-oriented approach to that would be to allow an NFT holder to create a bunch of licenses to print out displays that then can belong to other people. And now other people are sharing in the collection game, but the NFT holder is potentially getting rewarded for the amount of engagement that their NFT gets in the licensing market. So you can create other ways and other incentives for NFT holders to really start to have an incentive to promote the reputation of their artist, to promote the mystique of an artwork, right? Really trying to create these economic tools to align incentives. This off-chain coordination game, it's idealistic, but it doesn't promise much. So we're really trying to hone the licensing discussion, the specific ways that NFTs can be fractionalized and licensed and monetized all on chain, which I think is going to really create immense a value proposition, at least for the assets in our network, because the possibilities keep increasing. The number of ways in which you can do a business around your particular assets keeps on increasing, right? And which is going to lead to better decisions being made, more decentralization, etc. So that's kind of my 2 cents on the licensing potential of NFTs.
More than 2 cents, I would say, but indeed a few very, very interesting aspects here. One that's stuck here is the challenge, basically, that we still have a lot of off-chain activities associated with enforcement. So the whole other sectors of the economy have to move more or less on-chain, so that the whole friction can be taken out of this ecosystem, more or less. And if friction is taken out, that maybe speaks to the economic perspective. Usually prices go up, or the value of asset goes up as friction is taken out. Yeah, when you have an illiquid asset, the value is lower than in the case of a liquid asset. And this is a huge perspective for many application areas here of non-fungible tokens, I would say. Matt, maybe if I...
Yeah, I was just going to bring up the combination of a real world asset with a digital asset. I've seen is a bit of a trend as well. At Art Basel, there was a 1956 Ferrari boat that Enzo actually made himself. He dropped an F1 engine into a boat, from what I gather, and created the world's fastest jet boat, right? So this was being auctioned as an NFT, as well as you could buy the boat itself as well. I'm not sure what the status of the sale was in the end, but I know it was up. There was a reserve of, I think, 30 to 40 million. So some of these assets are really high value,
But what sorry to chime in here, what rights did I get as a buyer of the NFT version? did it give me the physical ownership rights of the boat as well, this NFT, or?
It did.
Okay, yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay.
So in that context, I mean, like absent any other terms, right? It's like that NFT just starts to look like a receipt, right?
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, I didn't get that. Yeah. Okay. Yeah.
And I think in the future, particularly in the movie business, you know, that side of the world has, you know, has got a great collection of assets to NFT, of course. And let's talk about Spider-Man for a moment. You know, he's the latest big blockbuster, but you can imagine, you know, from all the comics and all the original art and the movie clips, and you know, we're just seeing the very, very beginning from the entertainment world, you know, really jumping in, you know, only in the last 18 months, quite honestly, in a interesting way, where we've got some connections in Bollywood as well. And, you know, some of the NFT autograph posters from some of their stars are fetching $500,000 US, 450,000 actually. So you've got that side of it. And then you do get the real world autograph poster with the digital art. I assume you might be able to sell the digital version and keep the real version. But I guess depends on what the offering is, of course. But you know, there's all sorts of different ways of cutting the business model on this one.
Yeah, that's I think extremely interesting what we will see here. And one question would be, do you see? You mentioned that with NBA Top Shots, like a 50-50 split in credit card and traditional, let's say, fiat value stream and crypto value stream. In your business, is that more geared towards fiat or more geared towards crypto?
Ours is definitely geared towards fiat at this stage, although I think in the next 2 years, you know, there could be a complete reversal.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I really think.
Yeah. You think it could reverse, and that people are also. I have the impression sometimes people who are crypto rich, for them it doesn't mean that much if they spend a little bit more, let's say a few more ETH or whatever it is on the asset. Yeah. Would you concur there? And
yeah, definitely. I mean, look at Jack Dorsey's first tweet that went out 18 months ago, whenever it was. You wouldn't have in their wildest dreams expected what that went for in the what was it, 1.6 million or somewhere around that number. So, you know, there's a lot of low value stuff that you can get excited about in the sports side of it. You know, it's like going into, you know, 20 years ago and buying player cards with some bubble gum inside at the local shops. You know, this is obviously 30 years later, but this is just what I think the younger generation, of course, as we all know, has grown up with an iPhone or an iPad in their hands since they were 3 years old, right? They have a different psyche on gaming, and you know, those who also thought that esports was going to be a fad, you know, why are kids watching other kids play in the gaming area? Well, you know, it's a multi-billion-dollar business, obviously. Every major university virtually in the top 200 in the US has got an esports college degree now. So it's just a new world.
Very true, very true. And I just heard maybe one sentence here from a friend who is on the board of Richemont. that his daughter bought a virtual Gucci bag for, that cost more than the actual physical item, yeah? And she doesn't have any problem with it because she hangs out with her friends in the metaverse and not in reality. And that's why she needs such a digital Gucci bag there. Just as you take the real thing basically to the street and to the restaurant or so and brag with it. So that's the future basically. So Emilio, you wanted to chime in. How does that resonate with
well, I guess like general sentiment about the market, right? It's like trying to value the creative potential of the internet, which is like probably a difficult exercise, right? Like I don't see people's intertwinement with digital media like subsiding over the next decade, right? I definitely expect that people will consume more and participate more and engage more in these digital systems, and NFTs are just the primitive of ownership within these new systems. So if we want to talk about how much of a bubble the crypto art market is or the profile pictures, it's like, yeah, like those conversations are all valid conversations, but a lot of the mania is just being driven by the culture, right? The culture and new tastemakers trying to establish themselves in the new paradigm. And it's a competition, it's a game, right? The next crypto whale wants to be more of a whale than the other crypto whales. So you kind of have this organic sense of competition around reputation happening. And I think that is definitely like a positive indicator for the market in general, because hopefully what we'll start to see is that these tastemakers who are putting a lot of money into these ecosystems and into these NFTs will then commit to staking their resources in these networks, hopefully decentralizing the wealth a little bit, creating more engagement around sub-communities within networks. Like that's kind of the general path that I see this taking. So it's really tough for me to say that anything is a bubble for certain, right? It's like we're still in this early era where the collectible mentality might prize things for how early the timestamp was on the issue date, right? It's just like the timestamp of the issue might become more valuable than the artwork itself at a certain point and to certain people. At least in the case of single edition digital art, it's tough to say what the fate is for the open editions minted on Nifty Gateway. But those are the type of assets that I would think would be a little bit more suspect in terms of their longevity, because they're great ways to create engagement around artists, but they're not necessarily great ways to preserve value. So that's kind of my overall perspective. I think scarcity is key, and there's a lot happening kind of now that's establishing the taste-making prerogatives of the future. So I think we're here to stay.
Yeah. So I recently participated in the PUC auction here on Nifty Gateways, just to be part of it. So we'll see what will be the outcome here.
But that's a little bit different, right? Because PUC at least has such conceptual appeal, right? It's just like he's always doing things that are twisting the narrative a little bit. So I definitely not seeking to discredit your purchase there. I think, I wish I had participated there.
Just something which fits basically to my budget as well sometimes. Yeah. Certainly, I think a lot of potential in that space, I would say. Looking at so what we could say is that the world will be NFTized or something like that. Yeah, all those assets that are scarce can become NFTs, and an economy, a token economy is developing around that. That's how I would probably frame it. And those NFTs can play very different roles. It's ownership bearer tokens, so I can prove the ownership, and it depends basically what you actually put into it, what the actual value is. That's certainly one key aspect. And people are figuring out, that's how I see it, what types of businesses they can build on top of it. This experimental stage, I could imagine, also develops in waves, like, for instance, in the early days of the internet in the 1990s, 2000s, you had a hype and then complete, let's say, depression. And in 2003, 2004 or so, nobody, or many people actually thought the whole thing is dead, more or less, yeah. And only then the big players emerged, the Facebooks, the Amazon gained traction, Google gained traction, etc., Facebook. Yeah. So do you see a similar development here, or do you rather see, let's say, for the foreseeable future, a very strong positive dynamic here in the market, with a, I don't know, let's say 10x growth or so this year or next year or so?
I'm not quite sure whether you'll get 10x on 25 billion here. But I would say, you know, hopefully it's going to be stable. That I think that would be a reasonable result, and any growth would be a bonus, because I think it's going to be the assets that were bought, you know, last year. You know, if they're on the increase, there is going to be more of a boom. It will depend on the buying and selling of the assets, really. You know, there's one interesting example. You know, I read that Decentraland's parcels of land, I think there was 90,000 originally, right? And they were very, very cheap, you know, to begin with. But in December alone, one piece of land just sold for 450,000. Another block sold for 2.4 million. Now, the $450,000 one, you're going, why would someone pay $450,000 for a block of land? It was next to Snoop Dogg's house. So the traffic that they will probably create a new business. I don't know what it's going to be, but Snoop's out there, you know, promoting his live events in the metaverse and his NFTs alongside it and everything else. And the new trend, as you mentioned, is, you know, to buy assets, digital assets for your avatar, of course. There's all that sort of rolled up into this whole business model that, you know, I think the younger generation today, you know, we all know them. Some of them are making a living out of this, and some of them are making a very good living. The graphic design market and the CGI market, you know, for the metaverse, you know, will start to boom. I know of so many metaverse projects right now in creation in the VR world and on a mobile device. You know, I've never seen an explosive growth, and it's not just Facebook, of course, changing their name. It's Adidas. It's a lot of these major brands that are coming into the market and saying, I want this. I want, you know, Nike's got their own metaverse, and look at their NFT world. It's so that's where the growth is probably going to come from, is the corporate side of the business, and how, like you said, they were going to monetize a real world bag as a digital asset for an avatar.
Emilio, going maybe back to the art market. In the art market, traditional art market, a huge topic is authenticity, around these topics. It's also about money laundering, for instance, is a big topic. Do you see these developments here in the digital space as well as a major driving factor? Like,
so on the authenticity of, I think authenticity is probably like the most important original value proposition behind NFTs in the first place. It was this idea that it's like, all right, you have a digital artwork that can now go for sale because you can provably trace its origins. And that's the idea that, you know, an artist with a known public address can now sign these messages that I guess endorses the artwork for circulation, right? And that's also a promise that this is my artwork, it doesn't infringe on anybody else's, right? It's like you can kind of attach all these legal terms and conditions to that original transaction. Now, in the NFT space at large, there's really no way of like proving authenticity, even though authenticity is technically verifiable. So like you can always technically verify where something came from, but you can never know who was behind the mask, right? So I can just go and pretend to be Picasso tomorrow and mint a bunch of things authentically from my address, but they're not authentic original creations. So that's really a problem that's kind of tough to tackle right now. For a curated art marketplace like SuperRare, it's not really much of a problem just because we really have a high criteria for people to get into the network. So it's unlikely that these more serious artists are willing to sabotage their reputation. But on uncurated marketplaces, there's real no way to know. Like you just never know who's anybody going to be. And so when you're purchasing something, you really want to make sure that you do your due diligence and ensure that you can confirm that the artist's known public address is the same address that appears as the artist of the work that you're buying. So that's the authenticity challenge, and it's really tough. It's really tough to plan for, but some of the ideas that are circulating around is just creating kind of like a database of NFT assets that can all be cross-referenced against future mints to ensure that everything that comes out as an NFT isn't exactly the same as another NFT somewhere else, right? So you can kind of show, hey, this is an original work. It still isn't guaranteed to be originally created by this person, but we do know that there isn't anything else like it, which is actually helpful for a lot of reasons. And particularly on our marketplace, it's against the rules to mint the same thing twice. So if the same thing twice is ever minted, that's a problem that we want to stop, right? So authenticity is certainly a challenge. On the other issue that you had mentioned, AML and suspicious activity tracking, that is certainly kind of like a paramount legal concern, I think, for every NFT platform, especially, I guess, in light of the new US infrastructure bills, which ultimately seems to put NFT platforms in a situation where they're being either forced to comply or forced to create the argument that the bill doesn't apply to them, but the bill is so broadly drafted that it would almost be impossible to make that argument. It really is going to come down to whether or not the regulatory authorities see NFT platforms as an enforcement priority over, let's say, DeFi platforms, right? But on the AML side, again, it's like it's certainly a suspected problem in the space, and it's something that we want to take seriously and look more into. But again, it's really a tough thing to plan for, considering that the whole marketplace is smart contracts, right? SuperRare Labs, our company, we have no authority to stop transactions. We have no technical ability or authority to intervene in any type of a marketplace transaction. So it really, in order to stop the AML problem, in order to create like or prohibit or censor certain types of transactions, there would need to be that over a stepping and saying, hey, we're no longer a decentralized art marketplace. We're a centralized art marketplace, and everything you do on here actually subject to our approval from a regulatory perspective. That might be safer, and other platforms might go the route of KYC. We've seen Nifty Gateway certainly already collecting everybody's identity. In fact, there was actually a dispute as to like whether that violated the terms of conditions to say, hey, you can no longer access your NFT wallets because we're changing our terms and saying you have to provide us your information now. It's like you can kind of see that these policy questions that necessitate the disclosure of user information are problematic from a Web3 perspective, are not necessarily and ultimately required from a regulatory perspective, depending on your view of the bill and your view of AML requirements. But it's a tricky one that's rife with all types of policy questions.
I think we have a question here. Amy from BFlow raised her hand. We have 5 minutes in the panel. Maybe we can have one question or so if she wants to pose a question. I don't know who can. No, yeah, anyway, it was maybe a mistake. So guys, we have 5 minutes or so.
Hi,
Amy?
can you hear me?
Yeah, we hear you.
I'm not sure how to take my screen off because the controls here. So I just thought it was very interesting talking about the authenticity of the NFTs. And I know there's technology coming out with some digital identity and cryptographics that enable the authenticity of NFTs. And I'm just wondering how much that's being integrated.
Yeah, Amelia, you might want to go with that one.
Yeah.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, there are definitely kind of like a bunch of ostensible